Hello and welcome to the Game of Gymnastics Podcast. So today is going to be a little bit different because it's just going to be me speaking and no interview guests whatsoever. So today is, as of the date of publishing, New Year's Eve. So Happy New Year to everyone and hope that 2025 is as good of a year as you want it to be. And today I want to talk about goals and New Year's resolutions, I guess, because I know how New Year's resolutions can go, like when they're going well, when they're going badly, all that sort of stuff, because I've had it both ways. As much as I might seem like I get all the stuff I need to do done because I managed to stay relatively consistent with this. I mean, I've taken a bit of break over Christmas. I would say that, but today's Christmas Eve as of recording this. So this is actually the most up-to-date you'll probably ever have it in terms of recording date to publishing date, because most of these were recorded like 6 months ago or so. So a lot of these recordings will have been very backdated. Yeah, so today I wanted to talk about resolutions, or as I would prefer to call them, goals, because they're quite hard to get right in my experience. It's quite hard to set a goal that you can actually stick to. It's quite hard to set a goal that you actually can commit to and can stay accountable for. I just wanted to sort of share with you the ways that I do it, the ways that I am planning to do it in the new year, and hopefully you can take something from it and possibly keep updated on it over the course of the year. Because what I've got one big goal at the end of the year that is what I'm aiming for outside of the gym. Like, this is completely separate to gymnastics, but it can very much be pulled in. And I'm going to try and do that as much as possible. But I've got one very big goal towards the end of the year. And then what my plan is I'm going to split the year up into quarters. So I've got 1st of January to March 31st, then April 1st to June 30th, and just go like that. Because I think that will be quite helpful for me at the very least, to sort of stay accountable and on top of what I'm doing. And it also just sort of allows me to change my mind as to how I'm going to get to that big end goal, because it's, as much as it is in my control, I can't just make it happen. Like, it's not immediately causal. Like, nothing I can do will immediately cause the end goal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So what I'm doing throughout the year is just giving me the best, like the highest chance of success. And that's sort of what I'm trying to get at. It's giving yourself the best possible chance of achieving what you are trying to achieve. And I'll use a very, very simple goal that a lot of people will do as a New Year's resolution that will very, very, very often fail. And you'll see things about this everywhere, and just like people attempting to go to the gym, and just like generic people, this is more about. You hear people say, I want to go to the gym more often. My immediate thought would just be how often and how long are you giving yourself to stay consistent with this, and what are you doing elsewhere in your life to account for this? Because saying yes to something is saying no to something else. So you have to figure out what exactly you're gaining and what exactly you're losing in terms of when you're setting these sorts of goals. So what I would do personally is or what I'm sort of trying to get at in terms of my goals this year is, how am I going to build myself up to get to that end goal? Like, say by the end of 3 months, you want to be going to the gym 4 times a week. That's also still not great, because how long are you going for? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve from it? You got to think about why you're doing something before you can actually commit to setting a goal as to how you're going to do it, because the why is the most important bit of it. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And sometimes that's quite hard to do, and sometimes you have to go very, very many levels deep in terms of why, because to get fit, sure, but why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do the reason behind doing that? And like, you can go very, very deep with it, and it allows you to get to the core reason, which is a lot more motivating than just surface level, I want to get fitter. Again, as an example, because you can relate this to anything that you want to do. Now, once you've got that sort of end goal, you've got to work backwards, because if you immediately trying to go to the gym four times a week when you've never gone to the gym before in your life, you're going to very much struggle. And sometimes you need to build up to it. You got to slowly but surely get into the swing of things before you then go for the big end goal. Sometimes that's quite hard, because you gotta stay committed and stay focused. But if you commit to making it a habit rather than just doing it for the sake of it, it becomes a lot easier to do. The only reason I'm in the gym 6 days a week, well, aside from the fact that I love the sport, is because I'm used to it and I've stayed consistent with it my whole life. So now it is just a habit. And you got to think about, what do you want in the next year, whether it be gymnastics or otherwise? What skills do you want? What routines do you want? What diet, nutrition? There are so many things that you can relate this to. What in school, in work, in anything really. But if you're trying to make some sort of change, it's really hard to just sort of make it happen just from nothing. So easing into it is one of the best ways to do it. Trying to do it little by little rather than just chucking yourself into it, chucking yourself in the deep end, because then you go into shock. What I like to do is just as a framework, because I like to do things in systems and processes, because that's just how my brain works. And I like having a system to do things, because it just means it's like cookie cutter approach and you can just do the same thing for everything. And it is very much, if you can do it for one thing, you can do it for everything. And many of you will have heard this acronym as well. Maybe not in the same way, maybe with different words, whatever, but use SMART targets, which I will pull a little bit out of order. The R I'll do at the end, because I think I changed it from what it was. But there's also smarter targets, and I can't remember for the life of me what it is. A-level P has evaded me in that context. SMART targets, so specific, measurable, achievable. I go with rewarding and then time bounded. So specific and measurable, I'll do together, because you need to make sure this is what I was talking about before, you need to know what you want out of it. So what is the end goal? What do you want out of it? In the gym scenario, it's fitness or strength. It could be endurance, and you could be wanting to go on more runs or cycles or that sort of stuff. I personally hate running. I'm more interested in cycling, even though I don't. And my focus needs to be more on strength strength really. Is my biggest focus in terms of in the gym, but it depends on what you want out of it, and you have to think about what will actually help you get to that goal, because there's doing stuff for the sake of doing it and doing it because everyone else is doing it, and there's also doing it because you know that it'll actually help you. There are two very different things. And measurable in terms of how many times are you going, how long are you going for, what are you hoping to get out of it at the end of it? I think the end goal is very important, but also the steps to get there is very important as well. Maybe you want an outcome-based goal, like I want to be able to lift this much in the gym. Maybe it's I want to be able to do all the skills in a routine that would add up to a 5.5 on high bar, for example. That would be a decent goal, because it's quite hard to do at the very least. But you can do the numbers on that. You can work out what sort of skills you would need to get up to that big number. Maybe you don't actually want to do a 5.5 on bar, but you just want the option. You just want the skills to be able to do it. And you don't need to be able to do it all. You don't need to be able to do it in a routine. You just need the skills themselves. And by the end of the year, I think that's a good goal in terms of that. Especially as a British gymnast, that gives you the opportunity to work on it as a whole for the start of next year for all the competitions like Welsh, English, British, Scottish, Welsh, Scottish, English, British, working your way up there. And because all the national comps are at the start of the year, so if you try and get all the skills by themselves and working towards combinations towards the end of the year, then you put yourself in a very good place going in towards the start of next year. Because if you don't have the skills you want to do in your routines, by the start of the year, you're just not going to be able to put them in routines that quickly. Unless it's just one, you just work ridiculously hard for it, maybe, but it will be tough to do it that quickly. Now, what I would do is you've got that end goal, whether it be, you could even do it on each of the individual apparatus. I want all the skills for a 5-5 on floor and a 6 on pommel and a 5 on rings and a whatever else it may be. Those are just random numbers I'm chucking out there. But point is that it doesn't matter how high the numbers are. It just has to be specific to you, measurable in terms of you can measure how close you are to it. You can measure what you need to be able to achieve the goal, but you can also measure your stepping stones into how you're going to get there. If you want to split the year into halves, into quarters and stuff like that, so you can keep track of your progress and you've got mini goals within the big goal, that I think is very helpful as well. These also need to be very achievable for you, again, because it's very specific to you and you shouldn't be doing it for the sake of doing it. You need to have an actual reason behind it. If this is unachievable for you and if you're trying to do things that just aren't going to happen, then there is literally no point in setting them, because you're going to be demotivated, because you're going to feel like it's impossible and you're going to struggle to be able to even get started because it seems like a million miles away. That's probably the most self-explanatory letter in terms of the framework. In terms of, obviously the goals have to be achievable, otherwise you wouldn't set them in the first place. That's just sort of the thing I'm getting at. And then I guess the next thing is, because I'm taking it out of order, you got to set a time frame, which should have already been done, to be fair, whether it be the end of the year, the end of the next 3 months, the end of the month. What do you want to have done by then? I always like numbers because that's just, again, how my brain works. By the end of the month, I think I'd struggle, but I think learn a new skill by the end of the month is probably a fine target if you're pretty close to getting it regardless. It gives you enough time. It gives you the opportunity to take a little break if you need and then come back to it and still be well within your time limits. It gives you options. I think that's quite a good one, but it's not explicitly measurable, so I wouldn't prefer that sort of thing personally. But if it works for you, it works for you, and you can sort of feel how close you are to it regardless. So, but I just hate qualitative stuff. Like I like my numbers. The letter I'm getting towards is rewarding because it's quite an interesting one in terms of I'm not great at it, in terms of how do you reward yourself for getting the targets? How do you keep yourself motivated? Is it taking away something if you don't get it, or is it giving yourself something if you do? So you can do it in either way. Some people are more motivated by something being taken away if they don't do something, and some people are more motivated by the prospect of getting something. And you sort of have to figure out which of the two you are. More people are motivated by losing something than they are about gaining something, because the fear of loss is much greater than than the positive emotion, whatever that would end up being, of gain. Maybe that's the sort of push you need. And setting the goals is great, but if you're not accountable for it, if you're not, I guess, rewarding yourself for it or punishing yourself for not doing it, then what is your motivation behind it? Is it simply the reason why you're doing it? Is it simply that big underlying reason for doing what you're doing? I struggle with that. And the entire reason I am doing this episode, the entire reason I am recording this now is because I had a conversation yesterday for me, a week and a day ago for you, about this sort of thing. There was a lot of stuff involved, but mostly it was like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And you have to think you've got a reason for doing everything you do in the day. You have a reason for doing it, whether it's just because you want to or whatever it ends up being. But I struggle to believe that there's not something underlying in everything that you do, whether it be immediate gratification. That's the easiest to understand in terms of why you're scrolling all day on the phone or whatever it ends up being. That's very easy to do because it's just immediate gratification. It's just keeping your mind active and thinking and entertained, engaged. But like with everything else that you do, whether it be gymnastics or otherwise, work is quite simple. It's to get money, it's to put food on the table. But beyond that, why do you do what you do? Why do you get up every morning? What is the thing that motivates you? And sometimes I struggle with that because I don't know what that is for me. If you can reward yourself for doing what you're doing and keep yourself on track that way, it's quite helpful. Now, I've had some issues in terms of being able to reward myself, as I mentioned, and sometimes it's quite hard to be able to stay on track as a result, and sometimes it's quite hard to be able to just push through if you don't know why you're doing something. And knowing why you're doing something is very, very, very important. You have a reason for doing everything that you do in your life, and whether it be subconscious or conscious, there is something that's compelling you to do what you do. You work because you have to, or you work because you want something out of it, or whatever it is for you. Most people work to survive, but there is some underlying thing. They work because they love what they do. Why do they love what they do? There is always, people say 8 levels deep. Why? So they say, why do you do what you do? Then why is that the reason? Then why again? Then why again? Then why again? And you keep going. You keep going. And eventually you'll get to your ultimate driving factor. Now, I have tried this and failed. So I don't really have I don't know. And what I end up coming up on is the love of the sport, wanting to inspire people. Why do I want to inspire people? I don't know. And stuff happens in life and makes you question a lot of things, but my last month has been really weird in terms of what's happened and what I've learnt. And the first thing was just life happens. What can you do? Just something that I couldn't control. And I hate not having control over what happens in my life. But people have their own lives and you can't blame anyone sometimes. Sometimes stuff just happens and you got to move past it. And then the other thing was simply just a piece of information. I got told it very soon after the first thing. Whether it was a good or bad thing that it was that close, I don't know. But it was simply just knowing that thing that's made me question and worry and just think constantly about what I'm doing. I know that this is a podcast about gymnastics. As much as I'm not going to say exactly what it is, I need to say something. And maybe if I say something, someone else will be able to do that too. And if I can be the sort of person that you say it to, then so be it. Because sometimes it's just hard to say. And I haven't told anyone this either. I got told it about a week and a bit ago now. And it's it's weighing on me. And it's really tough to be able to just sort of get on with it like I normally would, because it's the thought that one decision could have changed absolutely everything. And that's pretty much all I'll say. It makes you think, okay, why was that the decision that was made then? But it's made me think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And then I end up getting to, I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then it gets me round to, am I doing enough? What am I doing wrong? Am I enough to be able to do what I'm doing? And it's a whole downward spiral if you go down that sort of thought process. You get stuck. You get caught in a loop with yourself. Because I had the conversation, I spoke with them for quite a while. Yeah, I didn't mention a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about. And sometimes you just don't. Sometimes it's really hard to. They both know what's going on, and yet I still didn't talk about it. Maybe it's wanting to seem like I have it under control. Maybe it's seem like making me seem fine, seem like nothing's bothering me. It's not even like anything bad's happened. So it's like I feel dramatic for feeling like this. It's like I feel something's wrong with me for feeling like the way I do, for stressing like I am, for being the way I am. There's no point really in doing that. There's no point in stressing over how I feel. I just do. Like I said, there's always a reason, but sometimes you just won't figure that out. There's always something. Something that's going on currently, and right as of the time of recording this, I still don't know the full picture. So if there is something going on, if there is something that's bothering you, then either tell someone or get it out there somehow. Write it down or speak it to yourself. That's what I was doing last night. I was literally in bed. I could not sleep, so I was just speaking what I wanted to say on here today. And today I'm doing this just to get it out there, just to get something off my chest. If you've got something that's bothering you, if you've got something that's weighing on you, think about why you're doing what you're doing. And if it's tough to do that, then think about what you're going to get out of it. And if there's nothing, then make something up. Doesn't matter what it is. Just give yourself some sort of credit. Give yourself more credit than, because that's what we ended up coming up with yesterday. I just put too much pressure on myself to be more than to do more, to be more, to try and do something differently. Like I want to know that I'm doing more than I already am. I want to know that I'm doing enough. Sometimes you don't need to sort of let that weigh on you. You just have to talk to someone and they will tell you that you are doing enough. And sometimes you're not, and sometimes you need that kick up the ass. But 9 times out of 10, if you feel like you're not doing enough, yet you are trying your absolute hardest, either it's time for a switch in perspective and it's time to make a little change and try and stay consistent with that change, and then maybe make a little bit more change. It's 1 degree a day. I heard a story about a man who got into a terrible accident, couldn't move his legs at all. And eventually when he got into doing physio, the physio just said, try and move your knee 1 more degree every day. Just 1. Which is, if you know what that is, like a full circle is 360 degrees, as most people know. So 1 degree is a very, very, very small increment, but that's all they did. They did 1 degree a day. And when you do that, you're making progress, but it almost seems like you're doing nothing at the time. You end up with an incredibly small movement. And as you're doing it, it feels like you're not doing enough. As you're doing it, it feels like you're going too slowly. But at the end of the 90 days, at the end of the 3 months, you end up having 90 degrees of motion. You end up being able to bend your leg nearly fully. But that's just doing 1 degree a day, and you might feel like doing 2 on one day. But if you only need to do 1, then only do 1. And sometimes when you're feeling good, you need to do more. Sometimes when you're feeling bad, you need to do less. But if you stay consistent, eventually you will end up getting the results you want. And even if you feel like you're not doing enough, 9 times out of 10 you are. 9 times out of 10 when you feel like you're not doing enough, when you're worried about not doing enough, that's a good sign that you are. And if you need that extra bit of motivation, then finding those rewards for yourself is very, very helpful for staying consistent. But just remember, it's 1 degree a day. It's not 90 degrees in 90 days. But they are the same thing. Or I guess you could say it's 1 degree a day, not 90 degrees. Because one is a hell of a lot more specific and allows you to go at a very slow but manageable pace. It builds consistency and routine, and it allows you to keep going, even on the bad days, even when you feel like doing nothing. Just that extra 1 degree just pushes you in the right direction. Get those wheels turning and that momentum. These goals that you set for yourself, I would suggest to do this sort of method, the slowly but surely and planning out. I've literally planned out to the week what I'm doing. I know exactly how much I need to do on every week in order to stay on track for my quarterly goals at the very least. Maybe you don't need to be as specific as I am. Finding that those little changes that you can make that make a hell of a lot of difference. It's like on the bar, a fractional difference, a degree or a few degrees on the bar in terms of where you're hanging, where you're bouncing the bar, where you're going, makes all the difference in the world. It can mean your face on the bar, or it can mean you're completely off it. So maybe it's just those very, very, very minute changes that are the ones that will make the biggest difference for you. But you just got to figure those out for yourself. This time of year is very, very tough for this sort of stuff. And people often get very reflective, and I think it's a good time for you to do that. But also at the same time, it's very easy to get into a spiral, a very, very steep downward spiral. I would say just talk to someone about it. Because when you're in your own head, there's no way out unless you verbalize it. And I'm doing it in the most open way possible by doing it here. I'm not saying exactly what it is. I might tell someone at some point. But if you are struggling, if you are having a tough time and you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to, then just message me and I'll read it. I'll try and help any way I can. As much as I would be a stranger to you. You know me at this point. And like I said, this is a very, very different episode to normal. Very little to do with gymnastics. But I've tried to make it as specific as possible. It's just what's affecting me in terms of the sport, in terms of my life. And I suppose I'm the host of this, so I can do whatever I want. But it still feels like I've got an obligation to actually talk about gymnastics on this. So I will for a little bit at the very least. So yeah, with your goals, I would say keep it as specific to you as possible. And if you are struggling with finding out your why, finding out why you're doing something, and if you feel a bit unsure, unawares, find out whether you prefer to be, or if you're more motivated by working towards something or working away from something, whether the fear of losing something is greater or the feeling of gain is greater. Because again, more likely is the feeling of loss is greater. But if you do all those things right, if you make it specific, measurable, achievable, rewarding, and time-bounded, normally it's a pretty good goal. And even if you don't do the specific steps up to it, normally it's a good goal, but you might not get there if you don't think about the intricacies of it. If you are already consistent at something, it is a hell of a lot easier to stay consistent at it than it is to make a new habit. And that can be in the very smallest thing. That can be like, if you are not used to tracking nutrition, for example, if you struggle with what you eat and tracking what you eat, it will be very, very, very difficult to every single day, every single time you eat something, to write it down or to put it on your phone or to do track it in some sort of way, some sort of meaningful way. And if you're trying to do that and be on a very specific diet with a very specific amount of calories and work them out like based on the week and the month and everything like that, like, it will be incredibly difficult to do all of that and work out how much you're doing exercising and all that sort of stuff. It'll be very, very difficult to do all of that and all your macros and your micros, and there is so much to nutrition. And if you try and master all of it at the very same time, it will just crash and burn. It will not work. So this is for me, and I'm still experimenting with this myself. If you try and do everything all at once, it just won't work. So you have to be as slow and steady as possible. Just chip away at it one by one by one. And once you've built up one habit, then you can add another. Because if you try and do even two at once, even if you try and track your calories and even one of your macros, like keeping fats down, like, even that would be like very hard to balance all at once. So if you master one skill at a time, then it'll be a hell of a lot easier to build up, and it will take a lot longer. But is it better to try it once and fail miserably and then never try it again, or is it better to actually make a meaningful difference one step at a time, just slower? I would say I would rather make some sort of difference, make a positive change in my life, even if it was a bit slower, even if it took a while. Because in essence, that's what this is. It's trying to figure out what I'm doing, trying to figure out what I want to offer one step at a time. One very slow, very confusing step at a time. I say this time of year, but you have to also remember that New Year's, start of 2025, it's an arbitrary day. Like, you could start this on the 20th of Feb. It wouldn't matter, like, what physical day you actually start. Like, it does not matter. It's just that it's easier to work it in the calendar year, so that's why most people do it like that. But I don't like the term resolutions, because when people say New Year's resolutions, they automatically think they're just going to fail it, because that's what most people do. Most people fail the New Year's resolutions. So if you can either switch the terminology or switch your mindset on the terminology, that is one thing that will help you regardless. If you're already thinking one way before you've even started, 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to think when you get into it. I would just say to take it slowly but surely, and try and make it work for you. Because realistically, when you're trying to do these big changes in your life, it doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as you actually end up getting there. If you're motivated enough to get there, you will be willing to wait. You will be willing to play out the long game in order to get what you want, if you truly want it. And if you're still failing, you have to evaluate why. Most people will fail their New Year's resolution and go, oh, well, whatever. Didn't do it. Or they won't even pay attention to it. They won't even realize that they've stopped going to the gym, stopped keeping an eye on their nutrition or their weight or anything like that. Why aren't you already doing what you're doing? What needs to change to do what you're doing? what needs to give to do what you're doing. Where are your priorities right now, and where do they need to be? That's the fundamental reason. Because, as I said before, every single thing you do in a day, you have a reason for doing it. There is something subconscious, conscious in your mind that is compelling you to do it. So what is that thing? What can you cut back on? What strategies can you use? Whether it's, like I said, scrolling on my phone. I didn't do it loads, but if I had a spare second, I'd normally be on my phone. So now I've got an app on my phone that blocks a few apps for a few hours in the day and at night, so I won't be tempted to go on them. I can, but it takes a few steps to be able to actually get to it. So it gives me that time to sort of think, why am I doing this? Do I need to be doing this? And what could I be doing instead? And I think that's helped a lot for me. So what sort of things can you do like that? What sort of steps can you take to prevent yourself from doing the things that you don't want to do? And also, why are you doing them in the first place? Is it immediate gratification, or is it something else? Is it something deeper? And I appreciate this has been a very weird episode. It's been very all over the place, and sometimes I have very much struggled to get my words out, and it's because all of this is very new to me, as much as it would be for you if you decided to change as well. But I very much hope it's been helpful. And truly, I haven't said this loads, but truly thank you for listening, because I don't know how long I want to be doing this, but I will be doing it for the foreseeable future, for a while, a good while. If you have any suggestions for guests, if you have any suggestions for people you want to hear from, topics you want to hear about, if you have any questions, then you can leave a review on the show. You can talk to me directly. But yeah, feel free to contact me, whether it be directly or indirectly, to give suggestions or get heard and speak what you want to be spoken, what you need to get out there. Because, I'm not judging. And as much as you might think other people would, they won't. And I need to realize that too. And again, thank you for listening. And again, Happy New Year to everyone. And I hope you have a great 2025 moving forwards. Feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube, and follow the show and download and give the show a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thank you again for listening. And I will catch you in the next one in the new year. And I will be 20 actually. As of the time of releasing this, it will be my birthday tomorrow, and I didn't mention that once. So, happy birthday to me as well tomorrow, I suppose. It's actually a week and a day away for me, but yeah, happy birthday to me, 20. Let's go. All right. I will catch you in the next one. Peace. I'm sure I could find something out of this. I'm sure I can do my editing magic and figure something out for this episode. But right now, as of recording, it is an incoherent mess, so we'll figure it out.